Golf season never sleeps, and we got you covered here at oddschecker.com/US. I am back with my guy at Tour Picks, Joe Idone. We're breaking down LIV Boston. PGA Tour might be taking a couple weeks off. Not enough, in my personal opinion. I feel like that's shared by most. But nonetheless, no rest. There is still golf. They're in Boston. The field got stronger. They wheeled in a whale, Joe. They wheeled in their whale, some fancy signings through the summer, but their biggest current form whale has landed with some nice youngsters and a pack of veterans. You could always debate, the concept of LIV, but here we are. It's the strongest field they've got yet and some intriguing betting options.
Yeah, they're whittling away, like you kind of said there. They pulled in Cam Smith, obviously, some intriguing names with Neiman and Varner and some other guys coming over. We've seen these guys kind of show up in their first event to LIV and have some success before. Obviously, the first event with Charles, and then what we saw last time with Stenson out there in Bedminster at these long odds. Hard to get a real gauge on form of these players, because now we're starting to get into that area where we don't really have strokes gain data in terms of the LIV stuff, and then we're pulling really old stuff from the PGA Tour at this point. 54 holes throws a little bit of a wrinkle, increases a little bit of variance there. I believe it makes it less predictable, but also could make some options further down the board more potentially advantageous.
Listen, guys like me and you, we love talking golf. We love watching golf. Reality is, I am like a lot of people, just saddened that in the end, fans like us are going to lose because of this fracture. But it's a field. You can bet on it. You mentioned there's just so many variables when it comes to betting LIV Golf at the moment that you feel like it's hard enough to bet PGA golf. These fields are smaller, but what sort of strategy does one employ? We don't have stats. We go to courses we are completely unfamiliar with. The people that we like to have a lot of fun here, and we do it responsibly. There are different levels of gamblers, and the most responsible, disciplined golf gamblers I know, Joe, won't even touch an event like this because they can't model this. They can't model the course. They can't model the field. So it's just a complete no-go. That's why guys like me and Joe got you covered. Now we'll start at the very top. Cam Smith, Dustin Johnson, Joaquin Neiman, they come in at under 10-1. Do you have any interest in betting someone under 10-1 in a LIV event? Do you have any confidence? Might it be Neiman, since he did just play, in PGA event? So he's actually playing competitive golf. You're always kind of guessing what Dustin's mood could be. There's no cuts. They all get paid. I don't know who actually cares to find out the intricacies of the course and who's just going to go out there and hit some golf balls for 3 days. That's the silliness or the extra variables that LIV certainly adds from betting.
Yeah, and certainly with the new guys, you mentioned Neiman and Smith, they just had their Super Bowl. They just had their payday, and they're showing up here kind of 4 days later for a chance at another one. Like you mentioned, are they just kind of showing up to be the new signee, to show face, to hit a couple golf balls, to shake some hands, to sign some autographs? Potentially. I do think Cameron Smith is he's the best player. He's the best player that LIV has. I do think that there's an argument to be made, with the exception of what we saw last Sunday, that he was right up there for PGA Tour Player of the Year. Anytime you can win a Players and a major championship in the same season, 2 of the top 5 tournaments, it's something we haven't seen done in a very, very long time. I don't think that number is particularly unfair. That said, I don't really have interest in betting these guys, because you mentioned it's like you flip a coin 10 times and you could get you could get 9 heads, right? You flip it 1,000 times and the more likely you are to have a more predictable outcome. So less holes makes this less predictable, makes it bigger variance. Like you mentioned, you add in all the additional factors, 48 players. no cut. There's a big disparity between like what we saw at a no cut event the last couple of weeks on the Tour Championship was just really stacked all the way through. There's a big gap between Cameron Smith and when you go all the way down to the bottom of the odds boards in terms of talent. When you talk about Cameron Smith to Jediah Morgan and James Pyatt and Chase Koepka, they're not even close to the same player. So there's just a lot of things like you mentioned. We're kind of flying here by the seams, and we're going to try to work through a strategy. I don't really know what's best, to be honest with you. We're trying to figure that out.
That is true. That I 100% agree with you. Maybe guys like Dustin or a Brooks who took that huge money, Bryson, that huge money off the start. And there's a lot of, just mental wrangling that came with that. And it sort of may have completely blown up their summer in preparation for events. And maybe I'm making excuses, but maybe they are far more comfortable in their skin and their routine in preparing for live events. I don't know, guys. We're kind of just guessing. And part of the guessing is figuring out even what this course is. The International, it's a par 70, just under 7,000 yards. It appears to be, by all the research I've done, and it's been hard, a classical tree line golf course, and you're really going to have to avoid the big misses. It does seem like one of those classic accuracy golf courses. All that being said, Joe, if you are accurate with your driver, if you are one of those big boys that can bomb it and you are in a zone with it, there does seem like you can overpower it. If you get wayward, you could find real trouble. Other than that, I don't really know a ton about the course, classical tree lined and accuracy. So for me, I have long said, Bryce, we've all talked about the variables that go into live. The course does not sound like it fits Bryson DeChambeau. But in that next tier of golfers at 20-1, I am betting Bryson at that number. You can, it seems to be the standard Bryson number right now, Joe, for the simple reason, I don't know what any guys are up to. I know for a fact Bryson still grinds. Like, I'm not assuming that. That's as clear as day to me, that he still prepares as if he was just competing in a FedEx Cup. So I feel comfortable in doing that. Maybe people can laugh and say this is not a course fit, but that's just like, I'm on this auto Bryson live, and it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked for any of the premier players if you've chosen any of them to do this with. But because of Bryson's dedication, despite all the silliness, I'm willing to back him at 20-1.
Yeah, there's two guys here, Geoff, that I think you mentioned. You can have a comfortability in terms of, that the preparation there, that they're going to give you 100% effort. And one's Bryson and the other one's Patrick Reed. Reed's been playing. He went over to the Asian Tour. He played in, I believe, Singapore 2 or 3 weeks ago, had a decent like T15 finish. Given that it's sub 7,000 yards, that's what the initial listing is. Now, they did this thing in Bedminster where they added some additional yardage as the tournament got closer, which they could very well do here. But sub 7,000 yards seems to negate a little bit of Bryson's advantage, would appear to, without really seeing the course, and kind of bring Reed into play. If he's able to keep it in the fairways, if he's able to scramble, usually smaller golf courses in terms of length also have smaller greens, which adds a little bit of around the green game. Those are the two players I like. I haven't really done anything inside of like 20-1, just because that's not where we've seen the winners fallen. But I totally agree with your sentiment that I think that there's two players that you can trust in putting some big dollars down, which you'll have to do with these type of numbers, Bryson and Pat Reed.
Yeah, so I'm not really prepared for big numbers. And Patrick Reed, I do like as well. Everyone that follows my content would know that. Bryson, I'm just sort of piggybacking as I have this like Bryson at 20 in a live event just has this auto thing for me. Like it's auto. There's a 2 in front of Bryson in a live event. You could argue it could be separate from an actual like betting card I make, because I'm ride or dying on Bryson in live golf until he wins and gets me my money back. Yeah. Full acknowledgement.
And he will.
Miscalculation in New York. Yeah. Epic for me and what I thought Bryson would do. Going farther down though, we mentioned, could be great week for accuracy guys. That screams maybe a Paul Casey, maybe a Sergio Garcia, Joe, but it is Abe Ancer and a 28-1 over at Bet Rivers. 25's out there, bet 365, but bet Rivers on the grid, 28-1 for Abe Ancer, above average length and really strong accuracy. And in if you know me, my favorite thing about LIV Golf thus far has been LIV Golf press conferences.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, nobody from their word of mouth, and listen, it can be hard to take any of them seriously. Some have been more contrite than others. But in forgetting all the other sort of press conference conversations, I got the sense nobody actually will miss the competition more on the PGA Tour than Abraham Ancer. And I can only hope that he is self-motivating himself for the competition that exists on LIV, because I personally feel is a great course for Ancer. I'm going to be betting Ancer over at Bet Rivers this week, 28-1 on the odds checker grid.
Yeah, if you mention it's an accuracy course, I see that it is potentially great value there. It seems like Sergio kind of like pulled some of these guys in terms of like Ancer and now Neiman and then potentially Pereira. They all seem like very like a close knit group, and they've kind of made this leap into the unknown together. But yeah, if we're talking accuracy, if we're talking a guy that a young player that you can trust is in decent form and has been putting in the reps, I don't mind Ancer at all.
Okay, Joe. So we are just on the tip of the 30-1s now. As we've noticed, in front of 30 is not where you've been cashing LIV tickets. I'm not really sure how long that's going to stay that way. As I've already mentioned, I do feel the better players will get way more comfortable in their skin and the world in which they've created for themselves by being, members of LIV. Just naturally over the course of a few events, they'll just be more comfortable in all that being on LIV sort of represents, and they'll find a zone for how to prepare, because it can't be easy to prepare with such limited golf. That being said, I know, we're going to pass over Brooks Koepka 28-7-1 over at FanDuel. That could scream fair. Part of me thinks Brooks is a dead fish, but if guys that can hit it long and straight, and Brooks, when he's in his zone, can absolutely dominate and find those greens, maybe there's life on that. But I know me and you have found somebody who seldom wins, and maybe a change to LIV can fix that up. It is our guy, Harold Varner, who now sits at 30-1. On the odds drop, me and you were corresponding. We were able to get Varner's at 35-1. He has now come down to 30. It's even shorter in some places. I've wasted a lot of money on Harold Varner on the PGA Tour, in which he's never won, and I can't resist getting in on his first LIV event. I know you're with me. Are we crazy, Joe?
No, maybe we're crazy,
Maybe.
Geoff. I'm not totally sure, but
We
I like
might
him
be
as
crazy,
well.
but betting Harold Varner this week is not the reason why, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I like Harold. Look, he's good off the tee. I think that just given where the number is, but you and I, like, we aren't gonna, and it's kind of nice for us. You mentioned the guys earlier who are very analytical and will just follow the stat model to the tee, and where the numbers come out, that they'll just make those bets. I feel like I'm more of sort of a gut and feel better when I look at the odds boards. When I see these numbers, there are some that just jump out the page to me and I'll make immediately. Harold Varner was that first bet. You mentioned the 35-1. Really good sort of release in terms of a press statement yesterday, I thought, for him that will basically decompress a lot of that pressure that these guys have coming over to LIV, that I feel like he's now been given sort of a pass by not only the media but the fans, which will help sort of free him up to just go out there and play. He mentioned he's doing it for his family. It's just a good number. I love sort of living in this 30 range. I've got a couple others here, but yeah, I'm comfortable with HV3.
It's incredible to see that Harold Varner statement and think about how, now I get it. Some of the guys that went early, they got caught in a way bigger storm. And I don't want to, go back and relitigate the Brooks Koepka situation and his answers to questions. Why do we care? And until Varner, I'd honestly very much loved Bryson's answer. I even saw him on some like Dude Bro golf podcast the other day. He's like, giving the money to Boys and Girls Clubs in Dallas, St. Jude, Shriners, these events still that have PGA Tour ties. He's writing them big checks. He says the American Kidney Foundation saved his dad's life. He's going to write them the biggest check ever. You might not like where some of this money's coming from, but it's going to go right. A lot of these players are trying to put it right back into their backyards, which I think is beautiful and been a big mistake by the players that haven't articulated that on LIV. I apologize for wasting time on that rant. Let's go north of 50 to 1, unless there's anything in front of it you can shout out or have a vibe on, Joe. Veterans have really been successful in LIV, as we've seen. Charles, Grace, Stenson, you mentioned it all. People trying to sort of call their shot with that this week, I feel, are looking at Lee Westwood. I'm not really there with that. North of 50, the names that do have my attention, though, potentially a Kevin Na, an Anirban Lahiri. I think, I guess his number might have dropped, but I think Sam Horsfield is sitting at 50 to 1.
Yeah.
Those would be the names at 50 to 1 or above that I am looking at. I haven't made a final decision on any of them. How about you, north of 50? Anyone swimming around your head?
I've kind of got two in this general area that I took flyers on. Horsfield, you mentioned, I think really got steam from those early like 60s. At some books, he's all the way down into like the 30 to 1 range. Not a good bet at 30 to 1, was a good bet at 60 to 1. I like Kevin Na, like you mentioned. Just has we know he's going to hit a lot of fairways if it is an accuracy test. We know that he's probably one of the top 3 putters in this field. He's really, really strong around the green as well. Some decent finishes leading in. I think this could be a good course fit for him. And Kevin Na is one of those guys that he just has a knack for recently like winning once a year. So I do feel like he has that potential upside. And the other one is a guy that I took in Bedminster that I felt pretty good about there. I'm not going to jump off just yet at a bigger number this week, and it's Charles Howell.
Yeah.
I believe I had a 35 to 1 in New Jersey. He's 40 to 1 now. I took both of those bets. I feel pretty good about them. So I've really got 3 in the outright market when you go from Harold Varner, Charles Howell, Kevin Na, all in this 35 to 50 to 1 range, which I feel like could potentially be the sweet spot. They're not the favorites, but they're also not guys that you can totally red line, which there's a good bit of them in this field. I think that that's a good spot to kind of place some dollars while we're still figuring out exactly what this setup, what these tournaments, what this 54 holes, what this no cut, what it all leads to. I think your safest bet is to kind of stick in this middle range.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm sort of stuck in my Bryson situation. I'm looking, I really do like the tout on Howell because there's so much red line here. And he is just an incredibly, as this course has been described to me, his name sticks out as I look through the players in the field that would pop here potentially. But again, almost taken everything. There's just so many unknowns, even in what you're reading about the course, because how they can alter some of these tee boxes and make it play kind of different. So you mentioned the bets you have made. I have an auto bet on Bryson in LIV as discussed, and we'll continue to discuss as we continue to do LIV content here. I have bet Abe Ancer 28 to 1. I have bet that Harold Varner. So those are the 3 plays that I have. Joe has mentioned his 3. They are in, they are listed below. Smash that like. We be back, maybe talking President's Cup, the next LIV event. PGA Tour starts up again. They don't rest at all. We'll be right into that swing season here at oddschecker.com. For Joe, I'm Geoff. Thank you very much. May the winners be yours.